Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Season 2, Episode 7 of the No Code Podcast. Very excited today for my guest. I'm always excited when I get to talk to another Tony because, it's really a premier name out in the world. So, welcoming my guest from Shift Capital, Mr. Tony Ewing. How are you today?
Doing well, Tony. How are you, sir?
Doing just fine. Beautiful Friday. Got some nice weather last few days. Getting to enjoy that. That always makes it better.
Indeed. At
How
least
about
it
you?
looks like a nice day from the inside here.
From the inside of the Ewing home office there?
Indeed.
Yeah. Have you gotten out and about last couple of days?
Only to walk the dog. That has
Nice.
been really my only escape. But that's I try to make the walks just a little bit longer these days.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we've got 3 Juliano pups over here, so they get to enjoy the backyard, and I try to give them at least one walk a day to get them out of the scenery of just the property here.
Fantastic. Yeah, same here. I'm fortunate that I have. I'm not too far from Fairmount Park and Wissahickon Trails, so we tend to try to go out and trail it up from time to time. So that is a
Yeah,
nice escape.
that's a great area. Definitely. I miss it. I haven't been down in a while. It's I made a couple trips into the city back in the summer and the fall, and then pretty much since then it's been me hanging mostly in southern New Jersey, and working from home and getting into our JLL Cherry Hill office here and there. So,
Well, tell the JLL Cherry Hill team that Tony says hello because as you know, they used to be my stomping grounds with Liberty back in the day.
yep, and that's when you and I go back to the Liberty Property Trust days. I was there from 2008 to 2010. I think your stint was a bit longer there. What was it, 04 to
04 to
2019?
19, almost 15 years to the day.
That's a solid run, my friend.
It was a solid run indeed, a solid run indeed. Well, it was, it was really split into two parts because I did the
Mm-hmm.
first half in South Jersey and the second half in Philly. So had the opportunity to have almost, two quite distinct experiences during that tenure.
Definitely. Yeah. And the time I was there was really interesting. I came on in May of 2008, and it was just as the proverbial shit was hitting the fan with the economic crisis. And looking back on it, I didn't know anything about real estate when I came into that job. I was more coming in from the finance side of the business. It was a financial analyst position. Hey, pup, how you doing?
Yeah, we're gonna have
All
that from
good.
time to time. Sorry about that.
Not, I'm more than used to it. But yeah, we, I came in May, and I can remember sitting down with George Allberger, the former CFO, and asking him just like, man, what do you think this real estate crisis is going to be all about? And I'm sure you remember the kind of guy that George was when he was running the numbers there. But he took out a piece of paper and he just fleshed it all out for me. He's like, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're positioned. And he really, he made me feel a lot better about the decision to join at that time. And it was a wild time. I mean, later that year, fall of '08 was when it really kind of went crazy. And but I remember how well George and Bill Hankowski and Mike Hagan and all those guys, that how they positioned the company to weather that storm and make it out the other side really in good shape.
I agree. In fact, it was astonishing. Astonishing might be overselling it, but it was surprising that we did not have more layoffs than we did at that time.
Definitely.
I think the fact that the size of the organization, the capital structure. Many thanks to George Allberger for putting the company in a good capital situation.
Yeah.
And the fact that I think they were wise enough to see that really it was about hunkering down and weathering the storm, trying to do the best with the assets that you could at the time in terms of leasing, selective dispositions, certainly not a whole lot of acquisition and development.
Yep.
But being able to care for the store, if you will, during that period of time, put it in a very good position moving forward. And then shortly after that, having the forethought to see that suburban office may not be going the direction that we had wanted it to, and then started selectively disposing of those assets and kind of starting its evolution into more of an industrial shop.
Yeah, definitely. It was done with a lot of, almost you said astonishing. I don't know that that's uh, a word that is inappropriate. I mean, it was really with a lot of foresight that they could see the path forward, and a lot of past decisions that were really strong in the fact that they didn't over leverage the balance sheet. There was not a lot of risky unsecured debt out there. They were super smart and responsible about how to position the company. And then I think they did an equity raise, a continuous offering in the stock market. And I think that was 2009. And they timed it this might have been a little bit luck, but they timed it perfectly. Because I remember when they did it, it was at like $35 a share. And then a couple months later, we were trading down at like 18. And just because the whole world had just taken such a big impact, and quickly climbed back up for Liberty. But what I appreciated back in those days is the executive team took the time to really explain it to everybody in detail,
Mm-hmm.
and to people that didn't quite honestly have a huge connection to all those kind of macro issues that we're talking about. But they got together really as like a family and said, hey, here's what we're doing. Here's how we're going to solve this. We're going to come out the other side. We're going to have some pain in the short term, but we're going to make sure everybody's okay. And I always appreciated that. I mean, they didn't have to do it that way. They didn't have to do it that way, and they did. And the way they just communicated everything, I will always have a fond memory of Liberty Property Trust.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. When I joined in 04, it was 1 year after the passing of the patriarch and founder Willard, aka Bill Rouse. I had never had a chance to meet him, but saw plenty of videos of him and heard all the stories. But when I joined, there was every leader there had a Rouseism of some sort that they would throw out there. Some strange expression that that Bill Rouse used to espouse fairly frequently, and there was so much reverence to this man that I had never met, and it was surprising a little bit. I was like, wow, who was this guy? And so everybody kept talking about him, and it was a little bit extreme in some respect. And then over the years, I started to really understand about the culture that was started as a small company feel, small company vibe. Use the word family. It was very much a family type atmosphere. Getting together for the Bill Rouse Day of Caring, for example, where we go out and do our community service projects, and that culture really permeated the organization. And I think it speaks to some of the success that they had, some of the loyalty that so many of its employees had. I mean, there were a lot of long-time employees of that organization.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. 30-year employees. Yeah. And I worked with some of them in the finance and accounting group. And you mentioned that Day of Caring. I started in May. The Day of Caring was like 2 weeks after I joined. And for those listeners out there, that's a day where everybody in the entire company, Liberty Property Trust, spread out, we presence on the West Coast, the Southwest, the Midwest, and certainly the East Coast. But every office would go out and they would do some sort of charitable event. Everybody, totally mandatory. Everybody's out there, and not just, go through the motions for an hour or two, like a full on day of some pretty good manual labor most of the time. And I joined, and I felt really bad because the Day of Caring, it came on the same day that I had tickets to Pearl Jam at the Camden waterfront, whatever it was called at the time. And
probably the
but I
Tweeter
still,
Center.
Yeah, I think it was. I think it was. And I had tickets that night, and I had to bail a little early. And when I was started saying that, people were looking at me like, yeah, I don't know if you're supposed to do that, man. I'm like, look, I bought these tickets well before I joined Liberties. I didn't know it was going to fall on that same day, but I did my piece, and I just had to bail around, I don't know, 4 or 5 or something to get down to the show, and yeah, but it was what a great family, family company, really, is what it felt like.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, 15 years worth. So, you know,
Yeah,
that's family for me for sure.
yeah. So how did you get into real estate in the first place? When I was doing a little, we've known each other a long time, but for this podcast, I do a little research here and there, and I noticed that you started, in undergrad, you were not kind of specializing in real estate or anything like that. You were into something else. How did you kind of make that transition? Go.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I think I muted you for a second. Sorry
yeah.
about that.
Yeah. My dog's really, he's making his presence known to the Amazon delivery people walking up and down the street here.
Hey, you got to let those people know that beware of dog.
So yeah, so coming out of undergrad as a mechanical engineer, the only thing I knew about my career trajectory was that I did not want to do mechanical engineering. And three internships at the Eastman Kodak company back in the day taught me that. So I went into technology sales, essentially, and found myself in New York City doing technology services and business development for tech service companies. And all was going very well during the expansion of the late 90s tech bubble. And lo and behold, late '01, early '02 rolls around, and that bubble bursts rapidly. And kind of sitting there saying, "All right, well, this isn't going to work anymore.
Right.
What am I going to do in life?" And decided that I was going to throw all my chips back into to going back to school, and went back to business school. And that's how I found myself here in Philadelphia. I was fortunate enough to get admitted into Wharton at UPenn, and really with a goal of continuing maybe down the consulting or the marketing road. And I stumbled upon the real estate club, one of 1,000 B school clubs that they have there, and it was a very active organization, relatively small. Um, but super active. And they have, as a part of the grad school program, they're a specialized real estate research organization, the Zell Lurie Real Estate Center,
Mm-hmm.
which is funded in perpetuity by Sam Zell and his former partner Robert Lurie. And they engaged in activities that basically took the students out of the classroom and gave them very real time experiences as to what it was like to be in the real estate industry. Everything from development, finance, investment banking, um, operations, asset management, brokerage, etc. And there, through that experience, it became clear to me, I think, that the asset class, if you will, that I wanted to be in was not necessarily something of a financial nature, but I really the hard assets really appealed to me.
Right.
And maybe that's the engineering background. I
Mm-hmm.
actually remember one of my favorite classes in undergrad was an elective in civil engineering, where we had to build
Okay.
bridges and columns and
Yeah.
whatnot. And so that was,
Right.
the fact, excuse me, the fact that we could use so many different skill sets, whether it's, the analytical skills, management skills, sales skills, to some degree, the engineering knowledge comes into play, and just understanding building systems overall, and do that, and work with a team of whether it's owners, operators, brokers, tenants, lawyers, city officials. You work with so many different types of people that again, all of that really appealed to me. And so the decision was made that that's the direction I wanted to go. I was actually, interesting story, was offered an internship by Liberty Property Trust and promptly turned them down, and decided to go underwrite loans for an affordable housing CDFI here in town, the Reinvestment Fund.
Okay.
And that opened my eyes really to more of the urban infill real estate scene here in Philadelphia. But then they came back around knocking upon graduation, and it seemed like it was growing in the right direction. I did a couple of days on the job there and said, yeah, this is the place for me. All that camaraderie and familial stuff that we just talked about kind of proved itself. So I was lucky. I was one of those folks who kind of little later in life, I was a bit older than my average business school classmate, being 7 years out of school, married with a couple of kids. Decided, was able to switch careers and then in earnest move into real estate. And that was, 18, 19 years ago.
Yeah. So you experienced the .com bubble, you experienced, the post 9/11 fallout. And then, we had some good years leading up to what I described earlier with the 08-09 crisis. And now we're living through another crazy time with COVID, obviously. And this comes at a time, a couple years after your exit from Liberty. So why don't you take us back to, I don't want to skip over 15 years of Liberty, but you're working on the leasing side, the development side of the business. You can explain that a little bit, but then, the transition once Liberty made it clear that, we're getting out of office product, we're getting out of, we're going strictly into industrial for the most part, and then eventually selling as they did a couple years ago. So what has that transition been like for you, going from, I guess Liberty kind of pivoted back in 14, 15, around then, maybe a little earlier than that.
Yeah.
And then leading up to today.
Yeah, that's right. So, I mentioned we were, I was in the South Jersey office till about 2011. And even at that time, we had started to unload a little bit more of the, kind of class B or A minus suburban office product there, and moving more toward new construction, trophy class, a little bit more urban infill. That became clear that Liberty was going to do more, urban core office and industrial. So that's gave me the opportunity to come over to Philly and work on our downtown portfolio. Was able to be involved in small respects with the two Comcast buildings, Comcast One and the Comcast Center, I should say, and then following up the Comcast Technology Center. But most of that time was spent down at the Philadelphia Navy Yard, redeveloping a master planned 100+ acres that we had under control into a wide variety of office and high finish flex and ultimately life sciences buildings down there. Yeah. So again, great experience to be on the leading edge of sustainable design, LEED platinum buildings, early life sciences cluster growth here in Philadelphia, as well as some award-winning towers downtown. So all great stuff. And interestingly, most people in the Philadelphia area who know Liberty know us as the office developers, right? The Comcast and the Navy Yard. But meanwhile, in the 22 other markets within which we operated, we were getting out of the office market, strictly focusing on industrial, on our way to becoming a pure play industrial REIT. So,
right.
So as you said, in comes the announcement in late 2018 at one of the analyst calls that we are getting out of the office business. And so, the writing was on the wall there, and they had, again, were very, very honest with those of us with whom, we spent most of our time doing that kind of work.
Right.
And gave us, we're very, I'll say, generous with their time and attention in making that transition. So all that said, I had mentioned before I had spent a my summer doing affordable housing underwriting and had an interest in urban infill, and just on my own always had an interest in seeing investment and development in historically underserved neighborhoods, underinvested neighborhoods and such. And so here I was at this crucial point in my career, thinking about what did I want to do moving forward, and with whom did I want to spend my time. And I was very fortunate that there exists here in Philadelphia this organization, Shift Capital, whose very thesis is that it is to leverage capitalism in a way that is forward thinking, that can go into, again, these neighborhoods where it's tough to invest, where the traditional deals and capital structures don't work, but identify and align patient capital, subsidy capital, pick an acronym, whether it's Live Tech, RACP, New Markets, Historics, pick a program, put that very colorful stack together, and then go try to do something catalytic in a neighborhood. When I say catalytic, I mean job creation, safe and affordable housing, new services and amenities that can and will, perhaps taking a little longer, but can and will be profitable for those investors, but at the same time has a very explicit double bottom line vision that for long-term sustainable change, so that existing residents of those neighborhoods can actually participate in the wealth creation that ultimately results in that. So that was my thinking. It matched very well with what Shift was doing. They were looking at the time for somebody that had a little bit more institutional background to bring some of that process and procedure and the like, as they were at an inflection point in their growth. And so it was a good match. It was a good match.
Yeah, that's great. I talked about this subject a little bit with Phil Butler, one of your NAIOP partners there, and he's out there busy running MRP, and they're doing amazing things right now. But when you can have that alignment between equity and the capital markets and the goals of neighborhoods within Philadelphia, to make sure it's not mutually exclusive, that real estate owners and investors are building their wealth while the neighborhoods get left behind. That's always a huge challenge. And you hear about gentrification, and you hear about all these, growing areas of the city that maybe displace some residents, or the things just didn't line up. The goal of the money guys, so to speak, didn't align with the people of the neighborhood. But when it does come together, like what you're talking about with Shift, it is an awesome thing to see. And it can be extremely powerful when you have all stakeholders kind of moving towards the same goal and direction. And I think that's it's a phenomenal cause, but a phenomenal business model too.
Great cause. Yes, strong business model, often politically charged, as you know.
For sure.
You said the G word, gentrification.
Yeah. Yep.
Which is again in and of itself a charged expression. There is, unfortunately, there are a lot of extremes that exist out there. Either it's a good thing or it's a bad thing, and it really does. I think it really matters on the delivery mechanism. We try to use the word impact, as opposed to gentrification. We try to use words like non-displacement, or reduced displacement, and participation, because these are the measurable outcomes that we're trying to achieve. Can that happen without any gentrification at all? Probably not. If you don't have a mixed environment, if you will, if you don't have new people with new dollars that can come in and insert new dollars into a neighborhood so that they stay there and circulate there,
Right.
right? Then I don't know how a neighborhood can become self-sustaining and thriving over the long term. Now,
Yeah.
this is one person speaking, right? I'm sure I've got colleagues that think a little bit differently. I know I've got,
Yeah.
neighborhood partners that think a little bit differently, and all those voices are valid.
Yeah.
But from my vantage point, that's kind of how, I view it as, a little bit, yes, you're walking a tight line
Hmm.
between, between negative gentrification and positive investment. Um,
Right.
and it's going to be like that for a while. But at the same time, we're trying to some degree, not keep the blinders on, because you have to listen and respect all opinions and voices in the
Yeah.
game, in the world that we play in, but try to stay focused on the outcomes. Who at the end of the day is benefiting from this, and is it the intended populations, neighborhoods, people, businesses, etc., that you started out with? I think that, for us,
Right.
those are the important metrics.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point in terms of the balance. Any deal, any negotiation, any new project, there you want the best outcome for all stakeholders involved, but everybody's going to have to give a little something. Nobody ever gets exactly what they want. Nothing is perfect. So when you talk about what Shift is doing in that realm, I'm sure, you know, it, the important thing is that you're listening to all the voices and you're weighing all sides of it, and then hopefully you're executing a good investment, a good deal, a disposition, acquisition, whatever it may be. To get the best for the most amount of people. And I think a lot of people think about real estate and probably especially in Philadelphia as you've got these different community groups, and they get in the way a lot of deals. It's not that. It's how do you balance their input, how they're going to be affected. What's the positive and the negative for those groups and those people and those citizens. And it can be challenging. It can be really challenging. I mean, I've been not a direct party of deals, but just as the COO, JLL Philadelphia, when we have a major development going on, and say we're 90% of the way to a deal, and then there's a hurdle to get over with a community group. In our narrow-minded approach, sometimes that can be frustrating. But then when you take a step back and realize, okay, how can we meet them in the middle somewhere to make sure that you know any impact on them is minimal, or if it can be positive, how do we make it positive?
Oh yeah, that is correct. Unfortunately, uh, for decades, community groups were not even consulted.
Right.
So if one needs to walk in the shoes of the individual on the other side for a little while to understand where they're coming from, and
Yeah.
then perhaps you can understand why they're fired up about whatever it is that somebody is doing, and why there are demands, um, that from one person's vantage point looks like they're just obstacles,
Right.
but truly are trying to, again, I'll say, trying to participate in whatever value proposition is being created, because it is historically accurate, to say that there are a number of projects, developments, where value is just extracted from
Yeah.
those local and historic populations. So
Yep.
to be blind to that is really an exercise in folly. So that
Yeah.
said, you're right. There still needs to be a deal at the end of the day. There still needs to be negotiation. There's now this. It's manifesting itself now in many of these community benefits agreements, that it looks like will be legislation at some point in time here in the
Hmm.
city of Philadelphia.
Right.
And we try to go in proactively and do a CBA with groups and say, yep, this is what we're going to commit to, and this is how we're going to bring value to, and jobs, priorities for, local and near local residents, and, blight reduction and safety increases and local hiring, et cetera, et cetera. So that's, those are, again, to look at those just as obstacles is a little bit archaic right now, quite frankly, because you're not going to get around it. So might as well embrace it, understand it, and do one's best to create, the most value for everybody involved. They want to be involved.
Yeah. And building the trust. You mentioned the proactive communication. When you do that, I think you can build that trust on the front end so that, some of these groups can understand, hey, we're not out to screw anybody over here. We just see a great redevelopment play or a great real estate deal here that's going to help. So when you get out in front of it and nobody's blindsided, I think that can be a key thing. And that's not just in community relations. That's with any business transaction or any real estate deal. When you have that, are known for that integrity and that honesty, it goes a long way in getting a good deal done for both sides.
Yes, yeah, that's true. The other reality is not everybody's going to be satisfied every time. In fact, unlikely that everybody's going to be satisfied all the time. Haters are going to hate regardless of what side you're on, and people the press and otherwise need something to talk about, so they're going to stoke the fire a little bit, and it's interesting times. We went into this line of conversation, I think, talking about some of the traumatic periods, whether it's .com, the Great Recession. We started talking a little about COVID. The pandemic has been a kick in the teeth, for sure.
Yeah.
The neighborhoods and the populations that we serve, like many other historic negative events, have disproportionately negatively affected a lot of the folks that we deal with, whether it's commercial tenants or residential tenants or partners or construction or otherwise. And so, that has been difficult. We're still seeing the ramifications of that now. Certain tenants losing 100% of their revenue streams, for example. And so, really trying hard to, in addition to just the development that we do, there's a lot of programmatic activity that Shift is engaged in, that is actively attempting to assist on the ground, whether it's, healthcare disparities, whether it's closing the digital divide. We've got this program called Health Plus, which is basically complementary telehealth services and prescription reduction, price reduction plans. We've got other programs that financially motivate our tenants to volunteer time with local nonprofit organizations. Shift has been instrumental in starting what we believe is the country's first commercial corridor trust, similar to a land corridor trust. The Kensington Corridor Trust is, a nonprofit newly formed that, seeks to empower a local nonprofit that is headed by and chaired by and led by the local citizenry and local nonprofit organizations to command exactly what's happening on that commercial corridor. Different elements of that. It's kind of the not just the dollars and cents and bricks and mortar, but also fostering a lot more, I'll say generically, community and other disparities that exist out there that are getting exacerbated by not just the pandemic, but the economic impacts coming from that as well. Yeah. So if nothing else, I would say this is not news, but there is a bright light now shining on disparities nationally, and we're trying to do our part in our neighborhoods to kind of help close that gap.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly important. And, the impact has been felt as it usually is in a situation like this in lower income areas, people of color that are experiencing on a health front, on a financial front, on a job front. Pretty much all the statistics are worse for those categories than, you know, white people in suburban areas of the country. It tends to be the case. And it has once again shown itself. So I think for you guys at Shift Capital, in working with your partners, I mean, it's an all hands on deck, address to the problem. It's the only way you can do it, and it's to educate, to motivate, to help others get involved, and then to provide support wherever and whenever you can. And the larger macro problems of these inequities, I hope we can solve them one day. But until then, at least we can help to stop the bleeding and help keep people going to get to the other side of this, and then kind of recalibrate and get back on the right track.
Yeah, and I think you use a good expression there. Just do our part,
Yeah.
because there are so many other active individuals and organizations that have been doing this long before Shift existed, and will be and will continue to do their good works probably after we're gone. So the key there is collaboration, communication, going in and understanding from the local civic leadership what are the needs, actually listening to the needs, not going in dictating a solution, but trying to react, um, and try to implement solutions that they have experience with the good, the bad, and the ugly, and
Right.
really just doing our part in a collaborative fashion. If we try to just come in solving problems that we're not aware of fully,
Right.
Makes little sense, and usually causes more harm than good.
Yeah, that's very true. So, in addition to what you're doing with Shift, which is, I think a lot of great things, and I hope you guys obviously can weather this storm, and I'm sure you will. There's a lot of as grim as things have been in the last year, and ironically, I think this is the 1 year anniversary today. We're talking on Friday, March 12th, of when we shut our offices down in Philadelphia. So it's kind of an unpleasant anniversary, but at the same time, you think about where we are today. And I even went back and read some of my old emails, and that extreme fear and uncertainty a year ago today, even though we had no idea what we were about to deal with, and that was the anxiety, was the unknown. We didn't know what this was going to be. We didn't know if we were retreating for 4 weeks or what. But a year later, you've got vaccine rollout, you've got better treatments, you have case numbers that are going down. I mean, it's a sobering anniversary, but at the same time, I'm filled with a lot of hope that, we are not too far away, knock on wood, cross your fingers, that we're coming out the other side of this thing. And I feel a lot of hope on the horizon. I really do.
I'm with you. I'm with you on that. But at this point in time, I'd love to see some data behind the hope, right? But
it's a restrained hope.
Yeah,
it's a cautious optimism, but it's there.
Yeah. So many things in our society are a self-fulfilling prophecy. I believe that if folks actually do get behind it, when I say folks, I mean the average citizen, I mean business leaders, I mean political leaders, I mean the whole gamut. We get on the same page in one direction and move forward, then we'll get there.
Right.
There's as a lot of different voices out there that have a lot of different opinions about things like vaccines, like things like diversity, equity, and inclusion. Although the winds tend to be going in the right direction, and there is awareness. Some of that awareness, I think, needs to be followed up with more concrete, real action. Again, hope. I think hope is the operative word, and it's looking good. We need to keep it going and hope that this is use the word again, hope that it's not a sort of a flash in the pan, but rather a sustainable element in our society, whether it's just getting over the one pandemic that is COVID-19, and the other epidemics, I should say, in the U.S. with things like the lack of equitable opportunities and such. So again, but yes,
it's very, very real,
very
and unfortunately, sorry to cut you off there. It's very real, and unfortunately, it's completely politicized and polarized when you break it down, and it should be simple. It should be, hey, the success of more people across the board is better for us as a country, and there's no two ways about that. There's a lot of questions on how do you get there? What's the right way to get there? And I think that is the polarizing piece of it. But at the same time, there is definitely still too much hate and fear, and I guess maybe opinion from some that if this certain group does better, I'm going to do worse, and it does not have to be that way. And there are better ways for us to think about the problem and to go about solving it. And from a corporate standpoint, I'm encouraged that it feels like for the first time in a long time, the talk about diversity and inclusion is not just talk, and it feels more actionable today than it was 5 years ago, than it was 2 years ago, for that matter. There were talks of like, okay, we want to fill our pipeline of candidates with diverse people, and then we want to hire X percent of people in diverse backgrounds, but then there wouldn't be very much delivery on that, or there would be sort of excuses on, well, we couldn't do it because of this, that, and the other thing. But now I'm sensing, and this is within JLL, but also across the board, and in some of the other people I talk to that work at other companies, that it seems to be much more serious. It seems to be much more like, we got to move on this. This is how we're going to move. This is how we're going to hold ourselves accountable. And government's over here. In my mind, the corporate sector over here has a better chance at helping move the ball forward in a lot of these areas, in my opinion.
Well, as you said before, there's action afoot. So we'll see where it goes, but we're using language these days that we weren't using a year ago.
Yeah,
it is not a faux pas to talk about Black and brown people anymore.
Exactly.
It's not it's at least you're getting a lot more comfortable in identifying and using very explicit language to talk about real issues. And that in and of itself, I think, is a notch in the win column. And now we'll see. I presume we will continue to see that grow.
Absolutely, yeah. And there's an awful lot of work to do. It is. We haven't even taken the first. We've taken like the first half a step. I don't even think we've taken the first full step yet. So hopefully we do that. Hopefully we hold ourselves to account.
Agreed. Well, appreciate JLL doing their part.
Yeah, we're definitely. I'm really happy to be part of our East Coast Diversity and Inclusion Council. On our regional leadership calls, I raised my hand for that, and I thought that I could maybe offer some solutions and listen a lot and try to learn some more myself, because I'm a white suburban kid, grew up that way. I definitely don't feel that I've ever had any racism in my persona or my past or anything like that. But at the same time, there's just so much that I don't know that I want to learn and I want to understand, and not sit there and be that kind of arrogant, I know how to fix this. And I don't. I want to listen, and I want to learn, and I want to hear from other perspectives.
Yeah, well, there's plenty of resources out there. There's plenty of folks that want to have that dialogue and that conversation. We talked about before. It's really a matter of what lens are you looking at it from,
Yeah.
Walking again a mile in the shoes of those around you. And I'm happy to see even some of the other trade organizations. Like we just talked about, NAIOP, and the proud board member and a member of their diversity committee that Phil Butler chairs. We've got this great program that is, we'll give a plug for the NAIOP Drexel Summer Program, which I think JLL has been a sponsor of in the past.
We have,
to introduce high school students of color to commercial real estate, because there is no reason for them to know that it exists. So we've again got to be very intentional with what we're trying to do in terms of what does it mean to be diverse and equitable. Well, it means targeting certain groups and introducing them to certain opportunities that exist out there. So applications are open on both the NAIOP website and the Drexel Summer Program website, where you can go in and sign up. Every student that is accepted is fully funded. It will be a virtual program this year, but the exposure to the commercial real estate industry through some very high-powered professionals here in the Philadelphia area. It's a case study type program where you get mentorship from some of our young leaders as well. Very, very robust and looking to grow. This is year number 3, I believe, of that program here in Philly. So for those of you listening, check it out.
Yes, the Drexel Summer Program, sponsored by NAIOP. We'll link it when we send this podcast out into the universe. I actually spoke to Phil about it last week.
Oh, excellent.
Caught up with Phil, and we're totally happy to do whatever we can do from a JLL perspective to help in that initiative. And Lauren Gilchrist, obviously the president of NAIOP and our head of research in JLL Philadelphia. I'm sure she and I will team up and do whatever it is that is needed from us, and also find other ways to other avenues to explore too when it comes to D&I education of the real estate business to younger people. I mean, I've always said it, like me personally, I didn't know, I had not the first clue about real estate until I took the job at Liberty Property Trust in 2008. Villanova didn't have a real estate school at the time. They did soon after I left. I didn't have any family or friends in the business or anything like that. So to build that awareness with people that wouldn't, like you said, wouldn't otherwise have had any awareness of it is huge, because there's so much opportunity. I mean, there's opportunity on the ownership and investment side, on the brokerage side, property management, consulting. There's just a world of opportunity for students and to learn about the business and hopefully get into it when they finish school.
Quick anecdote, Nova's hardcore real estate now, right?
Yeah.
With the level school and everything. And their MBA program has a case competition every year. And
I've judged it.
So this year, the subject of the case competition is Schiff's North Broad Street development project.
Oh, wow.
At Broad,
great.
Germantown, and Erie. Yeah,
nice.
The director of the program, Sean Houghton, who I have known for years, great guy, reached out and said, again, he's very intentional, saying we want to do something that's a little bit different. We want to talk about just not the financial metrics, but what are some of the other metrics that we should be thinking about? And do you have any advice on this, et cetera, et cetera? So you're talking to the right group. So,
there you go.
So yeah, very excited to see what all those brainiacs come up with, and we could always use some good solutions, new and progressive solutions from new minds. So we're very eager to see what they come up with.
Yeah, they're an incredible group. I mean, I judged the one 2 years ago at the Union League. I was one of the judges for the I think the Delaware River Waterfront Council project. They did kind of a mock-up on that of land along between I guess Chestnut and a couple streets south on the Delaware. And some of the presentations were just, I mean, it was like, wow, I never would have thought of this. This is just really smart. And all the presentations were great, really well put together. And in addition to Sean, I got to give Jessica Taylor some props
Oh,
too
no
from
doubt,
Villanova.
no doubt.
She does an awesome job
Absolutely.
putting that whole thing together and wrangling people like me that it takes like 6 emails for me to respond and sign up for something because I'm just got so much crap going on. But no, I was happy to be a part of that. And also they ran a couple years ago a program called the Nexus program, which was for high school age real estate people that wanted to learn about real estate tended to be from diverse backgrounds. And actually, Mark Seltzer and I got to speak at the final event out of Villanova, and that was just unbelievable. They did such a great job with that. And I guarantee you, out of that group of, I think it was somewhere around 30, 40 kids, I guarantee you probably got 10 of them that are going to go into the business at some point. We hired an awesome young guy, Greg, to be an intern that next summer. And I think he's gone on to do some good things too. So, I mean, it's the time to start. Get them in high school, teach them about the business, follow up through college, and let's build a more intelligent, creative, representative workforce of the community. And that's, to me, that's been my goal as a leader.
I'm with you. I'm with you. That's fantastic. That's great, man.
Yeah. So listen, it's been a real pleasure here. We're coming up at the end of the hour. I really appreciate your time, Tony. You're doing amazing things. You're a great leader in the greater Philadelphia real estate market. I really look forward to grabbing a drink with you at a networking event sometime in the next few months, because that's when we would do our best strategizing and really breaking down some creative thoughts over a whiskey or something like that.
I'm looking forward to it. Thanks for having me, Tony. This is great. Congrats on your podcast success. I wish you more to come, I hope.
Definitely.
And thanks very much for having me.
Appreciate it. Thanks for listening, everybody. Take care.